Welcome back, True Seeker. Big viral story in the headlines. Shannon Sharpe accused of RAPE. And this news broke Monday, April 21st, 2025, the same day Pope Francis passed. And if you're new here, something I've educated about for going on 12 years is how if you pay attention to the stories that roll out in a news day, if you actually pay attention and look at the details, you'll see that they're all themed and seemingly the major stories of the day are all connected. There might be some exceptions to this, but day after day, you will notice this trend if you actually pay attention. Case in point, Shannon Sharpe. His birthday is June 26th. The majority of the world writes that date 26/6, a bit like the number 266. And again, Pope Francis was the 266th Pope, the first Jesuit Pope in the history of the Catholic Church. And if you're new here, gematria is the practice of coding numbers into words. Isus hominum salvator equates to 266. That's the Jesuit motto. Now, Shannon Sharpe is accused of sexual assault, a phrase that has gematria of 175, as does Pope Francis. They both equate to 175. For all you sports fans, again, go back to the 2022 NBA Finals. Boston fell to 17-5 in NBA championships. Golden State equals 175, like Pope Francis, which is interesting because they play in San Francisco, and Pope Francis is named after St. Francis of Assisi, just like San Francisco is. But also just go back to that regular season and look at what happened on the Pope's birthday. On December 17th, the Warriors won in Boston, dropping Boston to 7-5 at home in the 75th anniversary season. Later that year, the Warriors would win the finals in Boston, becoming 7-5 in championships for the Warriors and getting their 75th road win in the playoffs. Again, these things aren't an accident. All roads lead to Rome. The idea of the Roman Colosseum, sports to keep the proles at bay. Again, all these things go back to Rome. We are the new Rome. Furthermore, Shannon Sharpe, his birthday, June 26, 1968. The birth numerology of that date, 6 plus 26 plus 19 plus 68 equates to 119. That numerology would break down to 11, the master number. Of course, he was a great football player, the game of 11 on 11. But that 119, before you break it down, is noteworthy because Francis equates to 119, as does Vatican. And remember, last year when the audio leaked of him having sex with a woman, that was the news. September 11th, a date that the majority of the world writes 11/9. We talked about that connection with him in 119 last year when that happened. Now, here's the other big piece. Shannon Sharpe is 56 years old. The word Pope itself equals 56. We talked about how the Pope died on the 263rd day of J.D. Vance's age, which is the 56 prime number, one day after meeting J.D. Vance. If you missed my work on the Pope, you should check it out. There's a whole lot to it. But 56 is a big number with the Jesuits. Again, Shannon Sharpe played in the NFL, where everyone plays for the Lombardi Trophy, named after the Jesuit Vince Lombardi, who died unexpectedly at Jesuit Georgetown on the day before the 1970 season began. Keep in mind the word Vatican equals 70. When you run it the other way, so does Francis, and Pope just died on a 70-date numerology. But anyway, the Jesuits are the Society of Jesus, which equates to 56, just like Black Lives Matter. You might recall when they painted Black Lives Matter on Church Street on the 5th day of the 6th month, and Church Street's 16th Street, and the Jesuits have existed since the 16th century. There's also a relationship with the number 3 in 56. When you spell out 3 as a word, it equals 56. Shannon Sharpe won 3 Super Bowls, 2 with the Broncos, 1 with the Ravens. And in light of him winning 2 with the Broncos, it's noteworthy that this ritual comes 71 days after the last Super Bowl. Denver Broncos equals 71. Keep in mind that was Super Bowl 59 and Pope Francis equals 59. Again, Benedict stepped out on the 59th day of the year for Francis. The 59th U.S. presidential election is where Joe Biden was elected number 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday. Keep in mind the word Catholic is 71. And in light of it being Super Bowl 59, number stamped all over Black history, slave, Negro, Rasta, Blues, they all equal 59. It was the first Super Bowl with 2 black quarterbacks. Well, it was actually the second Super Bowl, but it was the same group from the first time it happened, which was just 2 years earlier in Super Bowl 57, the first Super Bowl on Lincoln's birthday, who freed the slaves. Again, the racial piece with this. And keep in mind, Black History Month ends on the 59th day of the year. Motown came out in 59. Number comes up a lot. So Shannon Sharpe, a black man getting shamed 71 days after Super Bowl 59. Also, from Sharpe's birthday to the shaming was 42 weeks and days. If you have not read my first book, Letters and Numbers, the 18th chapter is about how they bring 59 and 42 together again and again in the racial shaming and sometimes killing of black entertainers. Case in point, O.J. Simpson last year. Last time anybody saw him was the day of the Super Bowl, the 42nd day of the year, when the Chiefs became 4-2 in Super Bowls on the 42nd day. That was Super Bowl 58. And then 59 days later, O.J. Simpson died. And they showed him in his golf cart with a Titleist hat on. He was golfing the day of the Super Bowl. It was as the Masters teed off. Ephesians 6, verses 5 through 9. Slaves, obey your masters. If you run it in reverse, all of those words on the screen that equal 59, slave, Negro, Rasta, blues, if you run it in reverse, they all equal 76. Just like master equals 76. OJ announced dead in a 59 ritual, 59 days after the 42nd day of the year. Paying tribute to slaves, obey your masters. So many words connected to black history have to do with 42. Slavery, Tuskegee, the N-word, February, bus, Huxtable, Cosby Show, Martin, Malcolm X, a million more. A million more. And also, in light of the upcoming Super Bowl, that'll be on February 8th, 2026 in San Francisco. Again, Pope Francis is named after St. Francis of Assisi, just like San Francisco is. But from the ritual shaming on April 21st to the Super Bowl is 293 days, which is the 62nd prime number, and Shannon Sharpe is 62. I need to think more about this, but so often these off-season rituals do have a lot to do with what happens in the upcoming season. Of course, the Broncos and the Ravens are the teams directly connected to Shannon Sharpe. So this is something to think about for all you guys who try to get ahead on the futures, doing the research, because they always connect the news with the sports. Here's something for you to dig into. And actually, one thing I meant to look into is Club Shay Shay first broadcast. You know, when the show came out, he did the episode with Cat Williams. I like to call him Cap Williams because he's always capping. But you remember how Cat Williams kept dropping the 201s? He kept saying 201 this, 201 that. Remember, that's a very special number to the Jesuits. And Pope Francis was Mr. 201 himself. Catholic Pope equals 201, as does his birth name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio. He was the first Jesuit Pope. The Jesuit order equals 201. He was the first to live in Suite 201. So I find it interesting how Cat Williams did that early interview. A lot of attention was brought to Shannon Sharpe's podcast. Apparently, it's been out since September of 2020. I think a lot of people weren't as aware of this podcast until the Cat Williams interview happened. It doesn't look like the original release dates here, but that could also be something worth looking into. Does Club Shay Shay, his very popular podcast that's gotten a lot of attention and made him a lot of money in his post-NFL life, could it fit in somewhere here? Club Shay Shay, 144, just like Jesuit order. Go figure. Interesting. Again, getting shamed on the day of the first Jesuit Pope's death. And Club Shay Shay is a perfect match. And like I said, the Jesuit motto is Sus Hominum Salvator, 266. The day the 266th Pope died, when his birthday is 26/6. Tonight, episode 3 of the podcast. And we'll be recapping all of this stuff with the Pope, plus some additional notes, some oversights, really putting it together in case you need to get caught up on all that. My podcast will be scheduled for 8:30 p.m. Pacific, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. East Coast people have asked if I can change the time. I'll work on it, but it's hard with my schedule right now, having the little one. We put her down to bed, and she usually falls asleep about 8. So my podcast starts after that. But again, it will be episode 3 tonight, True Seeker. Thank you again to everyone who hits the like and the share. Thank you to everyone who supports the channel. I really appreciate your generosity. Until next time.